Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today I wanted to talk about Wolverine comic books, and more, specifically the Wolverine titled comic books. Because, if you are a serious comic book collector, which I assume you are if you're watching YouTube videos on comic books, you probably know that Incredible Hulk 181, First Appearance of Wolverine, is like the hottest book in comics, I would say. Certainly in the last 5 years. It's just skyrocketed in price. Really hot comic. For good reason, too. Great cover, First Appearance of Wolverine. But, I think for my budget, and, I like to have, pretty high-grade books. So in high-grade, that book's a bit out of my budget, to be honest. And, I think that book, there could be a possibility here in the next few years for it to cool down a little bit because it has just run up so much. And to kind of illustrate this point, I was looking at CGC 9.8s of similar books, and a CGC 9.8 First Appearance of Punisher, which is Amazing Spider-Man 129, very similar book, very similar year to Hulk 181. That's going for about $6,000-$7,000 buy it now. So that's a buy it now. So maybe a more, real price would be closer to $5,000 in a CGC 9.8 for First Punisher. A CGC 9.8 Hulk 181 is, I believe, usually people are asking about $30,000. So, very similar year, very similar books, both really cool covers, both iconic first appearances. But, Wolverine has just taken off. First Wolverine has just taken off. So I think there's some room to make for Hulk 181 to possibly come back to First Punisher a little bit. I'm looking basically for more affordable ways to play, to kind of get my Wolverine fix, basically. I really, really love the Wolverine series that started in 1988, went to 2003. Lots of amazing covers, within that run. There's some Jim Lee covers. Just great covers all through the run, I would say. And they're still quite affordable. So I think these issues are great ways to kind of get your Wolverine fix at an affordable price, essentially. So in this video, I just want to go over like the whole Wolverine series, I would say. And, do a CGC analysis, look on the census, see how many 9.8s there are, and, look at the prices and everything else. So yeah, you know what? Let's get right into it. The first one here we'll look at is Wolverine Limited Series number 1. I just unboxed this, a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And now this Wolverine comics, it's the first solo Wolverine comic, so the first time, kind of Wolverine name was on the cover in a comic book. This came out in 1982, and I mentioned, the Wolverine series started in 1988. So we'll go over some of the differences, but this was the first solo Wolverine comic. They did a 4-issue limited series, and it was a big success, and there are a lot of these on the census, and I kind of went over it on my unboxed video. We'll look really quick here. There are 2,534 CGC 9.8s of this book, which is a lot. That's a lot, especially for a 1982 book. Just shows, I think, how popular this book was when it first came out, and it kind of just in the early 80s really set Wolverine off on a good with good feelings with collectors, and it made Wolverine really popular kind of right off the bat. And Frank Miller was kind of the artist at the time as well. So this issue kind of had everything going for it at the time. A lot of CGC 9.8s. The CGC 9.8 ratio is 20.1%, so we'll call it 20%. So of all graded CGC copies, 20% are CGC 9.8s. And that's quite high for a 1982 book, and I think it just really shows how popular this book was right from the beginning. People kept it in really good shape, and, people were anxious to kind of get it to CGC when, CGC kind of came around in 2000-ish. So, a lot of CGC 9.8s in this book, but such a classic cover. If you're a Wolverine fan, I think this is a great buy. It's one of those books that's not super expensive, but you can get it in a CGC 9.8, so it looks like it came off the shelf. In a CGC 9.8 from a 1982 book. Price for this book, around $275. I paid $276 for mine. And, just a great cover. And I want to go over the sort of, Wolverine from the 1988 series, number 1, which is First Patch. I'll kind of, we'll mention that a little bit later, but I prefer this book over that book. you know, if you like out of a Wolverine #1, certainly prefer for me the Wolverine Limited series #1. And you know, this cover is being cover homaged quite a bit too with like X-23, and so I think that's really positive, just kind of long term. You know, you get kind of the younger generation getting a lot of cover homages with some of the younger popular characters. So I think that sets this book up well long term. And yeah, Wolverine's just so popular, and this probably is like the first alternative to a Hulk 181, certainly from the 80s. And you know, if you love Wolverine, I would say probably Wolverine Limited Series #1 might be the first book that I would kind of recommend to buy. A lot on the CGC census, but there's a lot because it's so popular, more so than, you know, there was just tons out there. Although, you know, in the 80s there were a lot of books printed. So next book here is Wolverine #8. Classic Wolverine and Hulk cover. So we're getting into the, you know, the 1988 series. This one came out in 1989. And this is a book for me that I'm just super nostalgic for. I bought a raw copy of this when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I still have that copy. So I really wanted a CGC 9.8 of this book. But in some ways, this is maybe the go-to affordable Hulk 181 alternative, because Hulk's on the cover, right? Like, obviously Hulk's not in this book. So, you know, Wolverine and Hulk cover, you almost can't go wrong, to be honest. Like, any Wolverine and Hulk cover from any era, I think, is pretty much a buy. If it looks really cool to you, it's pretty much a buy. Let's look on the census, though, for Wolverine #8. There are 323 of them in the CGC 9.8. And that kind of illustrates, you know, 2,534 in the 9.8, 323. So, you know, there's just a lot of limited series. That really surprised me, too, when I saw the census for this one a couple weeks ago. But 323 9.8, so a little bit more rare, certainly. You look at the CGC 9.8 ratio, though, it's a 42.2%. So quite high for an 80s book, to be honest. So of all graded CGC copies, 42.2% of them are CGC 9.8. So yeah, I think this is a book where a lot of people are in a similar situation to mine, where it's really a really nostalgic cover for them, and you know, such a great cover that kind of invokes a lot of childhood memories for people. That's what it does for me. So I think people that are sending them into CGC, they're like really, really in good shape, and they make sure that they're in really good shape before they're sending them in. And that 42.2% CGC 9.8 ratio shows that. And like, just really quick, it's kind of a good example of, you know, there's 323 of these, there's 2,000 some of these, but this is more relatively rare than this, because the CGC 9.8 ratio is 20%. The lower, the better. And this is almost half of all of these are CGC 9.8s, whereas 20% of these are CGC 9.8. So, yeah, that's why I always go over the 9.8 ratio, because, you know, you'd say, oh, there's only 323 of these. Like, this should be like 3 times the price, or whatever it is. And speaking of price on this book, I've saw some auctions lately finish in kind of fire sale 1 week auctions for this book at about like a 135-ish price, so 135 US dollars if you're patient on this book and you kind of wait for an auction. I believe I've seen them maybe as low as like 125. My book, I paid about 160 for mine on an auction as well too. So yeah, my auction somehow just kind of got a bit unlucky, and it ended up being about $30 more than a normal auction. But I've actually seen these sell for as high as $230 in a sort of buy it now. And I think this is kind of one of those books where it's so nostalgic for some people that, you know, you might even get some like noob comic book collectors just coming in and they go, oh, you know what, I remember that Hulk Wolverine cover from, you know, when I was like 7 years old, and yep, like $230 done. Like, you know, they're just not really doing the price research for it, so they just want it right away. And because there's only 323 in the CGC 9.8 in the world, you know, it's not one that's going to like pop up all the time. So, yeah, really good book. This one, I totally recommend to grab this book, especially if, you know, there's an auction, you can grab it closer to 125. Because, yeah, Wolverine and Hulk, you just can't go wrong, honestly, with how Incredible Hulk 181 has blown up. I just, any like Wolverine and Hulk cover, I think, if you really like Wolverine and Hulk, like I do, you just can't go wrong with that. And I think over time, there's even a really good chance that they'll elevate in price. So next book I want to recommend is a Wolverine number 88. So this is the kind of the first battle with Deadpool, and amazing cover. Obviously, look at that, just such a great cover. And yeah, this is a book I picked up for $100. I've since seen an auction that just ended a week or two ago on eBay that this went for, I believe it was like 82 or 83 bucks or something like that. I bought mine on like a buy it now, and it was like $99.99, I believe. Which I thought, when I bought it, I was like, yeah, you know what, like if I was really patient, maybe I could save 15 bucks on it or something, but I was like, that seems like a pretty good fair price for first battle with Deadpool, so I just kind of jumped on it. Let's look on the census for this one. This one's a little bit different, a little bit weird, I would say, or odd on the census, because I don't know if you can see it. This is it says deluxe here, so this is the deluxe edition. So on the census, they originally did not distinguish between the normal and the deluxe edition, but then I believe a year ago or whatever it might have been, they started having a separate deluxe edition census holder. So before they started differentiating between deluxe and non-deluxe, they kind of had them all on the one census. So it's really hard to kind of know, you know, how many deluxe and how many normals there are. The normal version is way more expensive. Apparently, there's like single digits of CGC 9.8s of the normal version. So it's, you know, way more. I honestly haven't seen one sell, but I've seen buy it nows in that like 400-ish range for the normal version of this. But the deluxe version, which is apparently, you know, more widely available. And what I did with the CGC census is I just combined the two, because I think on the first, when they didn't separate them, they were mostly deluxe anyway. So anyways, there's when you do that, when you kind of combine them, there's a 65 CGC 9.8 in the world of this. So 1 of 65, which I think is really cool. But the CGC 9.8 ratio is 52%. So of all graded copies, 52% are CGC 9.8. And that's pretty high, but, you know, this is, you know, getting into kind of mid-90s. So by then, collecting was popular, and, you know, this is such a great cover, so I could see why that's a little bit higher. But to have only 1 of 65 item is really cool, especially when it's like this cool cover. This book probably, I would say, has the most potential for the price to rise over time out of like all these books, I would say. Just because it's $100 now, and this is the first battle with Deadpool, and, you know, apparently X-Men's coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Deadpool is too. Like, I don't know, they're kind of rumors, but I don't know if it's confirmed. But if that happens, and if Deadpool and Wolverine are in a movie and they fight, I could see this going for way more than $100, like way more. I could even see it over time, maybe even, you know, getting into that Incredible Hulk 340-ish range. You know, like that's in the CGC 9.8, that's going for kind of 350 to 400. You know, I wouldn't expect that to happen at any point soon, but I think this, especially if the kind of MCU movies comes out, I could see this getting up to like $200, so doubling in price essentially, which is great. So yeah, I'd completely recommend to buy this book, especially if you're a Deadpool fan or a Wolverine fan. Probably my favorite cover, but certainly debatable because there's so many awesome covers. Next book is a Wolverine number 155. Speaking of Incredible Hulk 340, this is a Incredible Hulk 340 cover homage. I like this issue because I think it's kind of passing the torch, right? Passing the torch to Deadpool Wolverine from Hulk and Wolverine. And yeah, great Rob Liefeld cover. The price for this book is very similar to kind of Wolverine 88. You know, if you're patient and you wait for an auction, probably about $80 to $100. My book, this one, I paid $175 Canadian, which is about like $140, I guess, American. Same deal with this one. You know, I wanted it, and I was waiting about a month. I didn't see any auctions come up at all. So, but this was up in Canada too, so it was kind of, shipping was quite cheaper for me for this book. So I just kind of, you know, paid maybe $20 more than it actually would go for. I did see this go in an auction. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I saw one of these go, probably in the last month for sure, and it was about $80. So yeah, very similar. I think this one went for like 82 and this was like 80. So in an auction about that price, but looking on the census, there's 122 CGC 9.8s. So because there's just not a lot of CGC 9.8s out there, like as I was saying, I was kind of hunting for this for about a month or two and nothing coming up. And then one post in Canada for 175 Canadian dollars and just decided to jump on it and possibly, overpay a little bit, but definitely worth it. I think to get this awesome Incredible Hulk 340 homage, which I have 3 Incredible Hulk 340s in the CGC 9.8. It's like one of my favorite books. Todd McFarlane, Wolverine and Hulk together. Can't beat it. So yeah, I really wanted to get my hands on this 340 homage. And yeah, I totally recommend this book. And for similar reasons, this kind of, I think, has a lot of upside as well. If Wolverine and Deadpool ever end up getting on the screen together. But even if that doesn't happen, I just think, 2 of the most popular sort of modern day superheroes, I would say, on the same cover. Almost can't go wrong. And yeah, I think, all these 4 books are, again, the price is right, I think. Especially when you're looking at Hulk 181, which has just run up in price so much, and, maybe you feel a bit uncomfortable kind of buying into the bubble, which I do, personally. So I think all these in the CGC 9.8, which is, such a cool thing, I think, when you can get a book that it looks like on the day that it came out in the 1980s. Like you're getting basically a book that looks exactly like it was on the newsstand. So now with the Wolverine, 1988 to 2003 series, so many great covers, so many other great key issues too. So I kind of made a list here of just all of them, the ones that I really want, and the ones that I want are kind of the classic key issues of the whole series. So Wolverine #1, first patch as Wolverine. So I already said that I would definitely kind of recommend this one over Wolverine #1. And yeah, Wolverine #1, I think it could be a good buy as far as like, maybe since Hugh Jackman did Logan, they could bring in maybe a patch as the next Wolverine, because Hugh Jackman did such a good job and he was so iconic doing it that, maybe they just want a completely fresh start. So in that way, it could be a good book to kind of speculate on. But personally, I just don't like the cover that much. It's never really spoke to me or I never really was super attracted to it. Definitely more attracted to this cover, I would say. But nonetheless, Wolverine #1, first patch. You get a first appearance, so I think first patch as Wolverine. I think, that's certainly a book, if you liked it, I would recommend to buy it pretty much. Next book, Wolverine #10. This is a book I've seen quite a few auctions that I could have bid on, and it's just one I've never kind of pulled the trigger on. And I think there was, when I purchased my #8, there was a #10 as well. And I probably should have bought that book, man. I think some of the centering was a bit off. So Wolverine #10, first Sabretooth battle, great cover in the CGC 9.8. It's very similar in price to this issue, I would say, too, about $125 if you can wait for an auction. Maybe if you really want it now and you have to pay up, it's like $150 to $175. But first Sabretooth battle with Wolverine, great cover. Yeah, this is one that I will probably pick up in the CGC 9.8 at some point, I think. I really still want it. Next book is a Wolverine #17, the classic John Byrne cover. And yeah, this is not really a key issue in any way, but just a really cool classic John Byrne cover. And there's quite a few CGC 9.8s I see on the internet of this issue. So if you like the look of the cover, I think it's a really good one to go after. And a lot of John Byrne fans out there from the Uncanny X-Men run. So if you're kind of a John Byrne fan, that's a really good one to look at. But for me, the cool covers of Wolverine, this Wolverine series, are the Jim Lee covers from the 20 numbers. So Wolverine #24, 25, and 27. All 3 of these covers, they're Jim Lee covers. Just when kind of Jim Lee is kind of breaking on the scene. Personally, my favorite out of them is #25. But 24, 25, and 27 all 3 are really awesome classic Jim Lee Wolverine covers. I can honestly see myself buying all of these over time in the CGC 9.8. You know what? I haven't looked too much on price on these ones, but I would imagine they're very similar to Wolverine 88 and Wolverine 155, maybe even a little bit lower in price. So maybe about $70 to $80 on an auction. You can look at grabbing these classic Jim Lee covers. And yeah, Wolverine number 24, 25, and 27. And yeah, you know what? That is about it. There is, I think it's Wolverine 154. Which is a Deadpool appearance, but the cover's not as cool as Wolverine 155, so that could be another one to grab. But yeah, you know what? I think the Wolverine series, it's a great way to, again, get your Wolverine fix without really feeling that you might be overpaying for Incredible Hulk 181. And yeah, I was really sort of thinking of grabbing Incredible Hulk 181s, to be honest. Like, I was really, you know, thinking that I wanted to free up some money and grab a copy. But when I saw that first Punisher CGC 9.8 for, it was a buy it now for 6,000 to 7,000. I forget the exact number, but and then I've seen Wolverine CGC 9.8s and they're like maybe over 30,000. And I just don't think, you know, that, like, to me, I started thinking about buying the first Punisher in CGC 9.8 for about $5,000 or $6,000 because I thought, wow, like, that's a pretty good deal because they're about the same year. Like, Punisher to me is maybe not as cool and iconic as Wolverine, but it's almost there. It's like a good movie away from probably being just as iconic from it as Wolverine. So I have a bit of a feeling that, you know, you might not want to jump into the Hulk 181 kind of a frenzy right now. And all these issues, you know, I would completely recommend to, you know, purchase as kind of investment grade books, but you know, it's hard to say if, you know, these are going to be great investments over time or not. You know, I do think probably 88, because of the Deadpool crossovers, probably has the most upside. So maybe if I had to choose one, and maybe your budget, you can only get one, maybe a Wolverine 88 and the CGC 9.8 would be a pretty good buy. But again, to get that Wolverine fix, these are great comics. That, you know, the Wolverine series from 1988-2003. Some of my favorite covers. Yeah, I got to really kind of bear down on those Jim Lee covers. I think, like Wolverine number 10, the first Sabretooth battle, I want to grab that, but usually that one will just kind of pop up from one of my favorite sellers at some point or something like that, because it's, you know, it's pretty popular. Whereas those Jim Lee covers, I think, are, you know, don't come up as much, but yeah, I really, especially number 25, for some reason, I just really love it. Yeah, Jim Lee is just, especially in the 80s and the 90s, I really loved him as a kid, and even when you look at his art now, I think it really stands out from like all the other issues, like before and after it. So yeah, so many great covers. I would completely recommend to grab Wolverine books. I think that's gonna be it for this video, though. Yeah, I really wanted to, you know, share with you that my feelings on Hulk 181, and maybe, you know, maybe look to get your Wolverine fix right now. Look at some of these alternatives, and hopefully Incredible Hulk 181 cools down. And even if you're thinking, you know, should I go first Punisher or first Hulk? I think right now first Punisher is like Amazing Spider-Man 129 First Punisher is a really good book to grab, because it hasn't taken off yet like Wolverine has. I mean, it's pretty much Hulk 181 5 years ago. Like, I think Incredible Hulk 181 5 years ago, CGC 9.8 was probably going for about $6,000 or $7,000, and now it's 30,000 people are trying to get. So probably a more reasonable, real price would be maybe about 25,000, 20 to 25,000 for. But who knows? Like with how Hulk 181 has gone. But yeah, I think all these are great alternatives. So yeah, that'll be it for this video. I really want to invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. And love to have you on the team. Just getting started on the channel, so we're what, maybe 4 or 5 months in, so not just getting started, but still pretty early. So we need all the subs we can get. And when you press subscribe, the bell will pop up, and you hit the bell to get all our latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter too. I'm active on those platforms. But yeah, you know what? Kind of went over all the Wolverine key issues here from that 1988 to 2003 series. Also, Wolverine Limited series from 1982. All great, you know, alternatives and to get your Wolverine fix. And all, you know, Wolverine's so popular, so you could sell these really easily. and you know, just a lot of demand for Wolverine comics. And you know, I understand that because I love Wolverine. I'm a huge fan of Wolverine, and you know, it's a bit of a bummer that I feel a little bit uncomfortable going after 181 because the prices are so elevated. And I think because of my finance background, I somewhat understand you know, behavioral markets, and how, you know, when markets get really hot, everyone kind of piles in because, you know, they're hearing all these stories about how, oh, I bought this for, you know, 2,000 and now it's worth 8,000, and you know, people want to get in on that. But that's usually nearing the end of, you know, those bubble type scenarios when that happens, when people are just uneducated but listening to their friends who made a lot of money, and then they're just jumping in kind of. So I kind of feel a bit you know, just a bit apprehensive about buying a Hulk 181 now. So definitely all these alternatives I would completely recommend. In the CGC 9.8, you get almost a perfect comic from the 1980s. It's so cool. For, you know, most of these are about $100, 150, like $275 for a Wolverine Limited series. So I think they're just great deals and great books, great art, great stories. Can't go wrong. Thank you very much for watching, though, today. I really want to thank everyone for the comments and all the support, too. Yeah, really, I think some of the metrics I'm looking at on my YouTube metrics are starting to catch on a little bit. I think, you know, people are watching a little bit more, so thankful for that, and thanks for all the support. That'll be it for this video, though. I will see you on the next one.